Russia are always considered great superpowers capable of shaping the world order. However, the relationship between these two powers is not very good, even always in a state of tension. So how long will the confrontation between the US and Russia last, and is there a risk of it erupting into a full-scale war? Take down the bear. All will be revealed in today's video in just 5 minutes. Geography of the two giants. The United States of America has an area of over 9.8 million square kilometers, stretching over 4,000 kilometers from east to west and about 2,500 kilometers from north to south. Although ranked third in the world in area, the size of the US is still quite modest compared to its rival, because the Russian Federation is the country with the largest area in the world, spanning over 17 million square kilometers and not counting disputed areas from western Ukraine. Despite its enormous size, Russia's terrain is not too complex and can be divided into two parts with the Ural Mountains as the boundary. The western region belongs to the European plain with flat terrain and a humid continental climate with hot summers and cold winters. Meanwhile, the Siberian region in Asia has a subarctic climate with extremely harsh winters. This area has the western part lying between the Ural Mountains and the Yenisei River, while the eastern part has many hills and plateaus, interspersed with some plains. While the US has more complex terrain and can be divided into 4 parts. First is the Atlantic Plain located west of the Appalachian Mountains with a humid climate, along with many rivers, sloughs, and wetlands. The interior plains have the area east of the 100 degrees west meridian while the western region has a semi-arid climate, while the Intermountain Plateau lies between the Rocky Mountains to the east and the Cascade Range and Sierra Nevada Mountains to the west. The characteristic of this place is that the temperature increases towards the south, and the area near the Mexican border has desert terrain. Finally, the Pacific coastal region has a much milder climate than the interior. For the US, the interior plains are the main agricultural production area, thanks to the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River system. The main flow originates from Lake Itasca in Minnesota and empties into the Gulf of Mexico at Pilottown, Louisiana, with a total length of 3,766 kilometers. Broadly speaking, the Mississippi River Basin covers 2,980,000 square kilometers, while the Russian Federation possesses the Volga River system. The main flow originates from the Valdai Hills, Tver Province, and empties into the Caspian Sea in Astrakhan Province, with a length of 3,531 kilometers, and the total area of the Volga Basin is 1,400,000 square kilometers. These two rivers have both played very important roles in American and Russian history. Father River. S main river is affectionately called. Besides irrigation water sources, these river systems are important trade routes, connecting regions of the country. Overall, Russia's terrain has little differentiation, with mostly plains, in which the Ural Mountains serve to divide the eastern and western regions, while the southern border is the Caucasus Mountains, home to Mount Elbrus at 5,642 meters. This is the highest peak of the Russian Federation, as well as all of Europe. Meanwhile, the highest point in the US is Denali Mountain, located in Alaska, with a height of 6,190 meters. It is also the highest peak in North America. While Alaska is also the US territory closest to Russia, specifically, Little Diomede Island belongs to Alaska and Big Diomede Island belongs to the Chukotka Autonomous Okrug are less than 4 kilometers apart. Notably, because the archipelago is divided by Little Diomede is almost 1 day behind Big Diomede, so the two islands are sometimes also called Yesterday Island and Tomorrow Island. Population and two contrasting aspects. Russia has a large size, but most of its area has a subarctic climate, with 65% of the territory covered by permafrost. Therefore, the population here is very sparse, with 146,330,000 people in 2023 at a density of less than 9, ranking among the lowest in the world. For comparison, the United States has twice the population and is currently home to 335,140,000 people. Thus, the density of the United States is 34 people per square kilometer, nearly 4 times that of Russia. In the Russian Federation, the region with the sparsest population, despite its vast area, due to the cold climate, only 25% of the population lives there. while the remaining 75% reside in the western part of the Ural Mountains, concentrated in the Volga River basin, especially the capital Moscow. The port city of St. Petersburg also has about 5 million residents because it is an important trading hub of Russia. In Novosibirsk, with 1.4 million people, it is the third most populous city and serves as the administrative center of the Siberian Federal District. In total, Russia has 12 cities with over 1 million inhabitants. In the United States, up to 80% of the population lives east of the 100th meridian west, and only 20% reside in the remaining. This is because most of this area has an arid climate, unsuitable for human cultivation or habitation. But the Pacific coastal region has very favorable conditions. The largest urban area is New York City, located on the east coast bordering the Atlantic Ocean with 8.1 million. Los Angeles on the west coast bordering the Pacific Ocean has a population of 3.8 million people, while Chicago, located south of the Great Lakes region, is home to 2.6 million people. It can be seen that although the United States has more than double the population, it only has 9 cities. This is due to a more even distribution of the population. Additionally, Russia's population generally tends to decrease over time. In 1991, the country had 147,000 people, but by 2023, it only had 146,330 people, meaning a decrease of, and is not counting the 2,420,000 residents living on the Korean Peninsula. Then Russia is currently home to 143,910 people, meaning a decrease of up to 2. This phenomenon is due to the collapse of the Soviet Union, which caused the economy to severely deteriorate, and many people chose to emigrate abroad. Along with that, the birth rate also decreased to only 1.44 children. In contrast, the population of the United States has continuously increased. In 1991, it was home to 240,590,000 people. By 2023, this number increased by 39.3%, equivalent to 335,140,000. Not only that, the gender ratio in Russia is also very imbalanced, with 86.6 male. This is because the average life expectancy for men is only 64.5 years, while for women it is 75. This large imbalance is due to men here having habits of smoking and drinking. Moreover, the balanced gender ratio may continue to decrease as many men emigrate abroad to avoid military service, due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. While the gender ratio in the United States is 98 males per 100 females, with the average life expectancy for men being 76.9 years and for women 81. Thus, the average life expectancy of Americans is 79.3 years and the median age is 38.8 years. The corresponding figures for Russia are 70.1 years and 40.3 years, respectively. The economic race and the prolonged war. For over 30 years, the United States has always been considered the world's sole superpower with a massive economic scale. In 2023, the country's GDP reached $27.720 trillion, continuing to lead the world and surpassing the second-ranked country. The structure of the world's #1 economy has 0.9% of GDP from agriculture, 18.9% from industry, and 80%.
S economy currently ranks 11th globally, with a GDP of $2.010 trillion. Only about 1/14 of the United States.
But this, 5.6% of GDP comes from agriculture, 26.6% from industry, and 67.8%. In terms of GDP per capita, the United States achieves $82,712, placing it among the highest in the world. It is 6 times higher than Russia's figure of $13,736, which is ranked as upper middle in the world. In reality, for over a century, the U.S. economy has always been superior to any competitor.
Moreover, Russia's GDP value is heavily affected by sanctions.
Since 2014, when President Vladimir Putin signed the order to annex the Crimean Peninsula, Russia's economy has severely declined.
Despite many recovery efforts, the 2023 figure is still lower than that of 2013.
After a decade, the country's GDP decreased from $2.290 trillion to $2.010 trillion, meaning a decrease. Currently, Russia's economy is still facing many difficulties due to encountering over 22,000 sanctions from Western countries. But the Kremlin has gained more experience in dealing with blows from the United States and its allied nations. When pressured by Western countries to trade oil below the price floor of $60 per barrel, Russia shifted to new trading partners, particularly China and India, to cope with the import ban on dual-use goods, which may be used for both civilian and military purposes. Russia continues to circumvent the law by purchasing from third countries, notably the UAE and Turkey. In response, the US continues to increase the number of economic sanctions targeting its rival. In reality, these are not to effect, as spending rose rapidly, the ruble depreciated, and inflation increased. The labor market tightened due to labor shortages and decreased productivity. Recently, on October 25, 2024, the Central Bank of Russia announced another increase in the key rate by 2 percentage points to 21%,
the highest since February 2003.
This move aims to curb inflation, which is at 8.4%,
but it could also dampen growth momentum in an overly tight labor market.
And with wage growth gradually weakening. However, at present, Russia still has sufficient tools to keep the economy stable and avoid a recession in the near future. One of the strategic advantages of the bear is its vast natural resources. Estimated to be worth up to 75 trillion.
They are fortunate to have significant reserves of almost all key commodities needed
to sustain the operations of a modern economy.
The country possesses 12% of the world's oil reserves,
32% of natural gas, 8% of total untapped uranium reserves, and 11% of the planet's coal reserve. Russia also holds 25% of global iron reserves, 33% nickel, 15% zinc and 11% tin, 10% lead and rhodium, 8% chromium, 7% copper, 3% cobalt, 2% bauxite, and about 1% gallium,
plus substantial amounts of beryllium, bismuth, and mercury. They also have about 12% of global gallium used in various fields,
from agriculture and industrial chemicals.
Moreover, the country holds up to 23% of the world's gold reserves,
12% silver, a share of platinum group metals, and up to 55% of diamonds underground.
This is also the country with the potential to lead the world in rare earth mineral production, used
in many modern high-tech devices, communication systems, and advanced weapons. Although currently accounting for only about 2% of rare earth, Russia has the second largest reserves, up to 28.7 million tons.
The rare earths the country possesses include samarium, europium, gadolinium, lanthanum, neodymium, promethium, and cerium.
Currently, Russia holds a unique global position in producing high-quality nickel, aerospace-grade titanium, and uranium for fuel. For example, while the country currently accounts for only about 8% of total, it holds up to 20% of premium nickel production used for high-quality stainless steel and nickel-containing alloys, essential for aerospace, aviation, and defense industries.
The same applies to high-quality titanium, where the giant VSMPO of Izmit in the Sverdlovsk region is unique worldwide.
In its ability to produce large quantities of aerospace-grade with uranium for fuel, Russia is not only the leading producer,
but its production costs are also 35 to 40% cheaper than any other country in the world. While the US is the country with the second largest natural resource base in the world, valued at up to $45 trillion.
If Russia has 80 billion barrels of oil and 47.8 trillion cubic meters of natural, the figures for the US are 48.3 billion barrels and 17.71 trillion cubic meters. It can be seen that in terms of hydrocarbon reserves, the bear lags significantly behind its rival. However, it is the world's largest exporter of oil and gas,
thanks to breakthroughs in hydraulic fracturing technology for shale oil extraction.
According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration report, the country has led the world in crude oil production for 6 consecutive years. The average crude oil production reached 12.9 million barrels per day in 2023. Breaking the previous record of 12.3 million barrels per day set in 2019. Meanwhile, Russia produced 10.3 million barrels per day in 2023, ranking second globally, with the combined output of the two countries being 23.2 million barrels per day, accounting for about 28%. In the same year, the United States became the world's top exporter of natural gas, with 203.5 billion cubic meters, including 89.1 billion via pipelines and 114.4. Russia ranked second with exports of 138.1 billion cubic meters last year, including 95.4 billion via pipelines and 42.7 billion in liquefied. Currently, the United States is increasing oil and gas production, partly due to the EU reducing energy imports from Russia. This both cuts off the Kremlin
and helps the White House bind allies, strengthening its global hegemony.
Meanwhile, Russia is also expanding its distribution system to increase market share. A prime example is the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline project transporting Mongolia to northwest China. They also aim to triple liquefied natural gas exports.
by the end of this decade to become a major supplier to the world.
The world's two top military superpowers. Currently, the United States and Russia are considered the strongest military powers, with the United States having a total of 2,127,500 military personnel, including 1,328,000 active troops and 799,000
and no paramilitary forces.
On Russia's side, the total military personnel is 3,570,000, including 1,320,000 2 million reserves and 250,000 in paramilitary forces. Thus, in terms of active troops alone, the two sides are nearly equal, but Russia is superior when considering reserves and paramilitary forces. Regarding Army equipment, the United States has 4,657 tanks, 1,595 self-propelled artillery, 1,267 towed artillery. Meanwhile, Russia has 14,777 tanks, 6,208 self-propelled artillery, 8,356 towed artillery, and 3,065 rockets.
It can be seen that Russia completely dominates in the quantity of army equipment. In terms of Air Force, the United States has 13,209 aircraft with 1,854 fighters, 896 attack aircraft, 957 transport aircraft, 606 tanker aircraft, and 5,737 helicopters, including 1,000. Russia has
4,255 aircraft with 809 fighters, 730 attack aircraft, 453 transport aircraft, 19 tanker aircraft, and 1,547 helicopters, including 559. Thus, the United States is completely superior in the number of aircraft. In terms of Navy, the United States has 472 vessels, including 11 aircraft, 14 destroyers, 23 frigates, 64 submarines, and 5 patrol vessels. Russia has 781 vessels, including 1 aircraft carrier, 14 destroyers, 12 frigates, 83 corvettes, 65 submarines, and 122 patrol.
Thus, Russia has an advantage in quantity, but the United States excels in quality.
With the total tonnage of its fleet reaching 7,393,348 tons. Meanwhile, Russia has only 2,152,546 tons, less than one-third.
The biggest difference is that the Russian Navy has only 1 aircraft carrier named
Admiral Kuznetsov, while the United States possesses 11 aircraft carriers. They not only have greater weight but are also equipped with more advanced technology. Each carrier also has multiple accompanying warships, forming a carrier strike group. Therefore, the U.S. Navy currently has no rival on the ocean. It can be seen that the military development strategies of the two superpowers are complete. While the United States is a wealthy military, focusing on active forces,
with limited reserves and no paramilitary forces,
Russia maintains a large number of military personnel with all components. A prime example is the Wagner Group, an important paramilitary organization on the Ukrainian battlefield, as well as being present in many conflicts occurring throughout the Middle East and Africa. Moreover, Russia also strives to maintain a strong land force, with a large number of tanks and artillery. This is because during the Soviet era, the country had to deal with adversaries sharing,
such as China to the south and the NATO bloc to the west.
In contrast, the United States focuses on developing its Air Force and Navy, with overwhelming numbers of aircraft, and this is because the country borders 2 nations with weak military potential, namely Canada to the north and Mexico to the south, while to the east is the Atlantic Ocean and to the west is the Pacific. This makes U.S. military strategy oriented towards conducting expeditionary,
where aircraft carriers and aircraft are the most powerful weapons.
Simultaneously, the U.S. also has up to 750 bases in 80 countries spread across all continents except Antarctica, while their opponent has only 21 overseas bases, concentrated in countries that were once part of the Soviet Union. And to deploy power globally, the U.S. is always the country that spends the most on defense. In 2023, they spent up to $916 billion, accounting for 37.5% of the total global military budget of while Russia ranked third after China with $109 billion, less than 4.5% of the world's figure. More importantly, the U.S. has a very powerful alliance force, that is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, abbreviated as NATO, with 32 member countries from Europe and North America.
This is truly a threat to Russia's western border.
The United States also has 20 non-NATO allies, spread throughout South America, Africa, Asia, and Oceania. While Russia also has its own alliance bloc, that is the Collective Security Treaty Organization, abbreviated as CS. It includes 6 post-Soviet countries, which are Russia, Belarus, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. However, this alliance bloc is very loose, especially since 4 countries, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and have all participated in military exercises with the UN.
Thus, only Belarus has not yet had any military connections with the West. Despite having greater strength, the US never dares to underestimate its opponent, and in reality, both countries do not want a direct conflict. Because both possess world-destroying power.
Specifically, Russia currently has the largest number of nuclear weapons in the world, with up to 5,580 warheads, followed by the US with 5,044. Both countries also deploy nuclear weapons abroad, with the US deploying them to NATO allies, including Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Italy, and Turkey, while Russia has currently deployed nuclear weapons in Belarus. Before becoming as tense as today, the US and Russia were one. The two countries officially established diplomatic relations in 1809 and continued to maintain good relations in the subsequent period. By 1867, due to the loss-making exploitation of Alaska, the Russian court sold this land to the French country for $7.2 million. Relations between the two countries began to deteriorate in the 1880s, when consecutive pogroms against Jews in Russia caused the elite and public opinion in the US to become alien. Therefore, it truly fractured after World War I. The Soviet Union was established, but the two sides still did not. It was only after World War II, when the Soviet Union became a superpower on par with the US, a confrontation. Both sides participated in the Korean War, caused the Cuban Missile Crisis, and became involved in a complex conflict in Indochina. Simultaneously, the Cold War period was actually very hot, as although the two superpowers did not engage in direct combat, they constantly supported opposing sides. But by the end of 1991, with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the newly born Russian Federation lost its superpower status. Therefore, the US became the global hegemon because there was no longer any opponent worthy of them. It was only at the beginning of the 21st century, when former KGB agent Vladimir Putin became Russia's president, and the country began its recovery phase, when relations with the US still did not change until 2008, when Russia attacked Georgia, and the United States gradually realized President Putin. And in 2014, the Ukraine crisis erupted, followed by Russia announcing the annexation of the Crimean Peninsula. From here, relations with the US fractured and the two sides entered a period of. In 2015, Russia sent troops to intervene in the Syrian civil war. By 2016, the Kremlin was accused of interfering in the presidential election, causing bilateral relations to worsen. And then on February 24, 2022, it launched a full-scale war targeting Ukrainian territory. In response, the US imposed many unprecedented sanctions to force the opponent to end the conflict. Not only that, the Biden administration has actively provided financial and military aid to Ukraine since the start of hostilities, with an estimated amount of up to $183 billion. In fact, the confrontation between these two powers is partly due to NATO's continuous eastward expansion, including countries that were once part of the Soviet Union, which are the 3 Baltic states: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. And if Ukraine were to join NATO, Russia would. Conversely, the US and Western countries frequently accuse President Putin of having ambitions to reclaim territories that once belonged to the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union. Therefore, the United States would readily welcome Eastern European countries wanting to join NATO to protect them from the threat from the East. This mutual suspicion has caused relations between the two sides to become increasingly tense, ultimately erupting into.
Above is the entire truth about the confrontation between the US and Russia. That's all for 5 minutes. Goodbye and see you in the next videos.